Alright, today I've got a new project that I'm going to start on. I'm not exactly sure where this is going to go, but I've been looking for this in the mail for 2 months. It's this, even before this COVID-19 thing, I've been sort of fascinated by these UVC LEDs. I was originally going to use them for water purification concept, but now that we have this new pandemic, they might be useful for this pandemic here. Usually UVC, in case you don't know, is considered germicidal. It'll kill most pathogens, bacterias, and a lot of viruses and stuff like that. And from what I've been reading, this COVID-19 is susceptible to UVC. Of course, a lot of hospitals and of course it's been used for 20 years or more for sterilization of water and things like that. So this is known to work, but oftentimes when UVC is employed into sterilization of something, is that usually you have, it's a multi-process. Usually you have some sort of filtration or UVC and then some sort of other decontamination going on with it. So a lot of the times these aren't 100% effective by themselves. Not that they can't be, because they totally can be. It's just, it's really hard to tell, and the problem with this video and where it's going is it's really hard to tell once you've fully decontaminated something with shining a light on it, because it's really hard to tell that there's any difference. You shine a light on it and it looks the same as it did before. UVC is, of course, since it is germicidal, the thing to note, Big Clyde does videos on these things every once in a while, except for he uses the old style, the non-LED style. He uses the cathode type, and those have been working for years, but these are a little bit newer. They're pretty expensive. This took about 2 months to get out of China. I got a little data sheet here. These supposedly LG chips from Korea, it says. They're 1 watt. They got a voltage of between 5 and 9 volts, 150 milliamps, pretty wide angle of view, and the wavelength is 265 nanometers UVC. And you see the package I got is the bottom one here. The other sheet that I have here shows that it's the peak wavelength should be between 65 and 80 nanometers, which is right where you want to be for UVC type germicidal applications. The thing to do with these at the moment, though, is to put them onto a proper heat sink, because these are actually quite heavy, because they're basically soldered to a chunk of copper. So these do get pretty toasty. I'm not sure what the efficiency is of these turning energy into light versus energy into heat. They probably aren't as efficient as other LEDs, because these are a little bit harder to find. You'll see that they look a little bit different. If I can bring it up to the camera here, give you a good look. Yeah, come on, focus, focus. Yeah, still not going to focus, are you? Well, you sort of get the idea, is that they got this golden look to them, and they're a bit different looking than regular LEDs. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to take some aluminum here, and use as a heat spreader so that we can turn these on for a little while and not burn them up, and start testing them. The other thing I have here is something to test them with, sort of get an idea if they're actually doing anything or if they're not just totally ripping me off. Is I have a box here, which I will show you what that is once I've attached these things to a proper heat sink and wired them up. So I think I'm going to do that. And as to what we're going to do with them, I don't know. There's a lot of applications on the internet, or things you can buy from Amazon, that are pretty expensive for like sanitizing cell phones and stuff like that. There's a little box you put your cell phone in, and it blasts it with UV and supposedly sterilizes it. And those can be effective, but you can see that the use case for those is kind of difficult. It'd be best if the phone was wiped down or sanitized every single time you washed your hands. So it'd be a great way if there was some sort of widespread method of doing that. The other thing I had an idea of what these could be, but of course grocery stores and ATMs and gas pumps would have to all invest in these and install them, is if you had an array of these covering over all the point of service devices, all keypads or hand pumps or stuff like that at a gas station that had a little cover that covered the handle or whatever else like that and blasted it with UV while it wasn't in use between customers, and then of course the panel would open up, touch free hopefully, and allow the next customer to grab it and mess with it any way they wanted. The reason why you really need a cover with these is because of UVC and the germicidal, they're bad for your skin and really bad for your eyes. They'll give you a real nasty sunburn like sunburn, but worse. Exposure to these can be bad any length of time. So you got to be careful when using these and properly enclose them and make sure that you are not overexposing yourself to this light. That is, if these LEDs aren't fake and a total rip-off, which I will try to determine. All right, time to do some wiring and mounting. All right, so I've already gone off my plans a little bit, and I found this 20 by 40 aluminum extrusion that I cut up that makes for a pretty good heat sink for these UVC LEDs. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to turn one on so you can see what it looks like, and you can tell they're not really all that impressive looking because our eyes don't see in the spectrum all that well, and it's probably the spectrum we are seeing is probably not the well, I don't really know. They do emit this slightly bluish light. Here, I'll turn them off so you can see a little off, on, off, on. So they emit this light when they're on, and I was playing around with this off camera for a little bit, and I suspect that we might have the real deal here, and that it might actually be producing UVC. It sort of has that look about it, and if I smell really close to it, it definitely has a little bit of an ozone-y smell to it. I've been told before that UVC, or 260 somewhat nanometers, isn't enough to really produce ozone, that you need to go lower in the spectrum, sub 200 nanometers to get a lot of ozone production. But I'm not sure if I truly buy it, because whenever I've had UVC style lights, they've always produced a little bit of a smell to them that's very distinct. So while I don't think the spectrum probably isn't the most efficient at producing ozone, I do think it does produce a little bit, and it's definitely, you definitely smell it a little bit. The ozone is the UV light actually splitting up the O2 molecules in the air, and you get these free oxygen molecules roaming around, and then I think they collide and with other O2 molecules and become O3, and that's ozone. And that can have devastating effects on organic, different types of living material as well. The other thing we have here is we have this box, and I got this from Amazon. It came in about the same time as the lights, and it's super exciting. You'll be excited with me, as it is a box of rocks. And if I can dim the lights a little bit further, and we take this and we shine it in here, we will see that one of these rocks in particular, this one here, starts to fluoresce. Let's see if I can get it to show up on camera. I'm trying to get my hand exposed too much in this. There's a lot of glare. Let me let me turn off the camera for a second and see if I can't make this a little easier. Alright, I have gone and brought down the lights a little bit and turned down the exposure of the camera, and as we see, as we pass the light over this rock, as you see, it fluoresces with this green speckles. This is a particular type of rock, and the reason why I got it is because it's called Wilmite. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the interesting about this rock is it only really fluoresces really well under UVC light, under the far UVC. I'm going to point this away from me and leave it on. But I'll put the rock in front of it so it looks nice. And cover up more of the light. It's actually a lot prettier in person than it is on camera. I'm not sure if the camera's picking this all up, but it's a very interesting rock. But it particularly fluoresces at the 260 or so nanometer, which is the deep UV, the UVC, that's the germicidal range. So it's one of the reasons why I picked up these rocks, is because I'm trying to find something to prove what spectrum we're actually getting out of this LED. And I thought that these rock specimens would be interesting because they're supposed to fluoresce under this particular this particular type of light, and it turns out that they do, especially this Wilmite. Somebody's going to correct me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And it's interesting. So based on the fact that I have this ozone-y smell to it, and it's fluorescing the rock like I expected it would, I believe that this is the UV spectrum that I'm looking for the germicidal water purification or air purification, or even surface decontamination. This is used in hospitals. You'll see them sometimes wheel in a big cart, and they'll have this tower that'll come up and it'll emit this light for, I don't know how long they expose the room, probably like 30 minutes or something like that. But that's part of the problem with this, is that even though I can say this is probably pretty effective at killing viruses and stuff like that, I can't say from my own experiences to know how long something has to be exposed and how close and what intensity and all that sort of jazz in order to get this thing to really do the business. But I've read recently just a bunch of papers and stuff like that that definitely does indicate that this is fairly effective when used properly. So I guess the way to go now is to sort of figure out, see if we can't quantify the best use of this, and see if we can't find some way of verifying its effect of any way. I'm not sure what I'm going to come up with. The other thing I can do is just sort of put my hands in front of it and just see how long they take to cook. I don't think I like that idea so much, though. Alright, so I'm going to come up with an enclosure and some sort of test we can do with this. I'm not sure exactly what this test is going to look like. Let me see what I can come up with. Alright, turn the lights back down here and turned on the LEDs, and we see our little rock specimen here is happily glowing away. So we've got some light. Now, one of the things I want to do is I've been wearing these safety glasses, and they supposedly block out UVA and UVB and all the UV rays and stuff like that. So I thought an interesting test is to put them in front of the LEDs and see if they really work. And I think, yes, except they stop glowing. The rock stops glowing when I put it in front. That does seem to have a dampening effect on the light. So I'm willing to believe that these safety glasses are helping me with my eye protection and this UVC light source we have here. One of the other things I'm going to try is, I think I found the experiment I want to do, and I'm going to pause it just for a second. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back here, and what I have with me is a Petri dish, and what I think the experiment I'm going to do is see if I can't grow up a bunch of start some bacteria samples off and hit them with UV light and see if it kills them off, and of course make a control and make a little bit of an experiment out of this. But one of the things that occurred to me when I was trying to block the UVC with my eye goggles, that I was wondering if the Petri dishes were transparent to UVC or not. And I find out they don't appear to be. They very much seem like they do very much block the UVC there. So that's going to put a little bit of a damper in my planning. I'll have to figure a way around it. I guess I'll have to expose the samples directly and know that I can't go through a piece of plastic like this. But that's interesting to know that whatever this Petri dish material is made out of blocks the UVC rather, well, seems to block the UVC rather well. Other thing I wanted to show that I borrowed from a friend real quick is that I have another light source here that's UV light, but it's a light used for curing 3D printed resin prints. And just pause it one more second. All right, here I've got the light source. Of course, this is a very, very big UV light source for curing, like I said, 3D printed resin prints. This is going to be a many more watts. As a matter of fact, let's see, it says 20 watts. So 10 times the wattage on this thing. And it says the wavelength on it is 395 nanometers. So not that, this is more of the UVC I think you would find in a standard black light or something like that. And we're going to turn it on here, and ooh, that is bright. But we see that the 8 on the rock here fluoresces rather well, but the rock itself is not. I'm going to turn the other UV light on here real quick. Yeah, see, that's the difference. You can see that the regular black light does almost nothing to this rock, but the UVC instantly, we have an instant fluorescent reaction. So that's cool to know that definitely this rock only seems to fluoresce under a much shorter wavelength of light than standard UV light sources would give out. So I am going to break this video up into 2 parts here, mostly because it's going to take a while for the bacteria to grow and to see any results. So if you have any ideas or comments or experiments we can do with a UV light, leave them below in the comments, because I'd like to be interested to try out more things to see what works and what doesn't. But other than that, thanks for watching, and we'll see the conclusions in part 2. Thanks again. One more note is I will put all the description and links to all the things I used in these videos in the description. If you would take a look at them, that would be swell.